changed a lot that we have done. So just to give you a little overview of Penrose and who we are, if you're not familiar with our organization, we're one of the largest affordable housing developers. We also do a little bit of market rate in the Mid-Atlantic. We do everything from multi-use to, or multifamily to mixed use to home ownership development. We have done special projects with veterans. We do a lot of different set-asides. So, you know, we've done student housing. So we've done a little bit of everything in the affordable housing world. You know, just our mission, just to give you a high level, is to improve the quality of our residents' life. So we're not just building affordable housing, renting it, and then saying good luck. We're making sure that we're putting services in our housing to help our residents be successful. We really want to help them move to whatever their goals are. So what that all involves might be some resident advocacy, you know, and of course our objectives at Senior Properties are we're helping residents age in place, or we're helping families gain self-sufficiency. And then we're gonna get into a little bit about, you know, overall property and fiscal operations. One of the things that Penrose does, which I think is unique sometimes in our industry, is we look at the service side of our company, and we take a holistic approach to that. So we don't just have supportive service coordinators at our properties when we're talking about support services that are doing this work. We also train our maintenance staff in it. We train our property managers, because truly everybody who works with people are doing supportive services and need to be educated on what that means and what their role is. So I'll let Kim tell you a little bit about Mission First.
Thank you, Shannon. Mission First Housing, much like Penrose, our mission is to develop and manage affordable, safe, and sustainable homes for people in need, with a focus on the vulnerable. We ensure our residents have access to resources to help them live independently. We deliver housing that provides long-term benefits to residents and neighborhoods alike. Today, Mission First provides safe, affordable, sustainable homes for more than 5,500 people in over 3,800 units. Our footprint is now the entire Mid-Atlantic region and serves a diverse resident population that includes families, veterans whom I work with, survivors of domestic violence, seniors, and individuals with disabilities.
So when Kim and I were working on this, we didn't know, you know, who our audience would be. So we didn't know what everyone's experience was with supportive services and housing. So we just wanted to kind of, again, just make you aware that, you know, in the housing industry, supportive services is a huge piece of that. And it really, if we tried to make a definition around what supportive services is, I think this is the closest we can come to it. It's providing quality life enhancing programs and services to our residents that will enable them to live independently, successfully, and will improve their overall quality of life. And then of course, supportive service coordinators, I'm sure there's differences in our organizations, but they're really there to work with residents, to link them to those programs and to empower them to be successful and improve their life as well. One of the other things that we thought was important for everyone to understand is why we have supportive services in housing. There's many different reasons. You know, one reason is it's the right thing to do. You know, I think when we build affordable housing and we think about who we're putting, you know, who typically would live in affordable housing, it's the right thing to do because we know those individuals, there's going to be barriers. They're there for a reason, you know, whether it's poor health or whether it's underemployment, or, you know, there's always a reason. And we know it's the right thing to do to help break down those barriers and provide them with the education and the resources. The other reason it's important to have supportive services in housing is because it's really an asset management tool. So, you know, in 1980s, when they started the Robert Wood Johnson contracts and the different programs that they put out there, it really makes an impact on the property's bottom line. So our coordinators are always working with our management teams to reduce turnover, to reduce housekeeping violations, any of those things that might really start to, you know, those budgets are so slim that, you know, when you start having all of those issues, it really could bleed your budget and make your property not successful. So I think in our industry, we've learned that if you can prevent one turnover through supportive services, you're saving your property's bottom line approximately $5,287. That's how much it costs all of the people involved to turn a unit, whether it's leasing, materials, compliance. So that's a pretty big number. And you know, when we look at the value of supportive services, to us, it's invaluable.
Well
Other,
said.
I'm sorry.
Well said.
I think the you know, again, the audience that might be on the group today is, you know, the importance of understanding supportive services and that connection of new development and how we move forward in our industry. And developers usually, when they're writing tax credit applications to get the funding to make these projects happen, they're working with different groups like that might be on the, you know, they're working with the bankers, they're working with the architects, they're working with all these different groups. And so you guys are already helping them put together a pretty solid application, and they know what their score is going to be going into that tax credit cycle. They know how competitive that project might be. Then supportive services comes in, and that's usually the category where we can really outshine our competition, and where we want to outshine our competition, because I'm tasked with then going into that project and looking at it and saying, what do we need to make sure is in place to, you know, when we house people 2 years from now, they're going to be successful, that it's going to improve the community. What community partners do we need so that we're not just coming into a community and assuming this is what our residents need, or this is what we should do. You know, we're connecting very early on, and we're putting a very solid plan in place, and we're showing our funders and our investors, you know, we are going to build this property and it will be successful and we will make a difference. So there is a very strong tie with supportive services in the development world as well.
So some of the examples of services that we did provide prior to COVID, we were very hands-on, I think, across the board, Penrose, Mission First, all of the resident services. Things that, you know, for the 5 pillars at Mission First, we like to hit health and wellness, youth enrichment, community engagement, education and employment, and housing stability. So we bring programming to our residents that address those needs, and also surveying our residents and seeing what their needs are in that particular building. Things like educational talks, nurse visits, smoking cessation programs, volunteer opportunities in the community to increase community engagement, to feel engaged with the community, and then social events to get to know your neighbors and support your neighbors, movie nights, coffee socials, you know, trips. So those are the kind of things that we used to do prior to COVID when we were hands-on and face-to-face. Resident services response during COVID-19 changed drastically. We had to transition. We had to think about how we could still stay connected to our residents and what that would look like and how we would do that. So we really had to, using the term, think outside the box and use all of the technology that we had at our disposal to stay in touch with our residents across all of our portfolios. New Jersey, DC, Philadelphia, for us at Mission First. Staying connected was important, making sure that residents had access to stay connected. We really had to dig down and figure out, okay, if they don't have access to do Zoom face-to-face, make sure that they know that they can call in and still participate in that way. Finding out who didn't have access to the internet, and, you know, finding out if we could help them out and getting them laptops. So we really had to take a good look at what that would look like and how we wanted it to look, and really push to make it stick. It took a lot of work, I think probably at Penrose as well, you know, using Teams, learning a lot of new technology myself, and then teaching the residents how to do that as well. Zooms, we implemented daily huddles across the board, all of our resident services. We would have a daily huddle every day. We really got to know each other well during this process, and really prioritizing on-site visits. They were very limited, and we had to decide what was most important, when we would go in and how we would do it safely. Food distributions, you know, just put your PPE on, drop it at the door, knock, and leave. But there were some things that we still really had to do in person, and we had to figure out how to do that safely. Collaboration as well. We really found that during this time, resident services came together as a group unlike any time before. across New Jersey, DC, and Philadelphia, we're sharing ideas, we're Zooming with each other, we're sharing programming so that a program that I might create on Zoom can be open to the residents in DC as well. So it's really been collaborative. It's really been a great learning experience, and I've gotten to know my coworkers much more than I knew them before. Specific programming, the programming had to change, obviously. We had to really think about what our residents would be attracted to, what's necessary during this time. It's a very unsure time with people maybe not being able to pay their rent. So we offered classes such as job readiness, finance and budgeting. We also offered things to draw them in that might be fun. So certain buildings would provide a bingo, meditation. Our community supporters really stepped up and agreed to join in with these programming. So we have an Ask the Nurse program each week where any resident across all of our districts can call in with any questions for the nurse. Eat well, eating on a budget, ways to, you know, budget your time if maybe you've lost your job during COVID. So that was really how we had to respond to this. We had to find out what the needs were of the people, also of our residents, and respond to that as well. So specific things like the job readiness, or you know, helping with unemployment, or you know, finding jobs, or getting compensation if they were laid off during it. So we really had to dig down and respond to the needs during this time. Shannon, do you want to talk about challenges together, or do you want me to keep going?
You can keep going, I'll jump in.
So some of the challenges were, our people typically tend to be lower income. They may not have access to the technology that we have access to. So when we would put out our monthly calendars, we would need to add you know, directions on how to do Zoom. We also did virtual check-ins with them every week. We would call every resident to check in. Some needed that more than others, some didn't. That's very time consuming, but very necessary. So that was a challenge too, to kind of, you know, kind of circle back every week with people and decide how's it going, what's happening, how are you doing in your world, how can I help you? The other challenge is just not being there. I have an open door policy. People know they would come to me all the time if they had something. They were a little bit more reticent to reach out by phone. So I really had to stay, you know, forefront in their mind and reach out to them so that they would have their needs met and they would make their needs known. So that was a big challenge for us too. We had a lot of positive outcomes during this. It's been very challenging. Like I mentioned, our team has become stronger. We're working better together. We're more technologically advanced now within resident services. And I think we're closer to our residents because we had to work harder to maintain that connection to them. And I think all across the board, they've seen that, they've appreciated it, and it's really worked on this level. And moving forward, we hope to keep those connections going in some way, some hybrid way, hopefully.
So just to follow up on what Kim said, because, you know, it sounded like when Kim and I spoke before this presentation, our companies, you know, everybody kind of had the same general response. And one of the things from a high level that I think companies in our industry had to figure out is staffing strategies. We are in a business where you need somebody at the property to take the garbage out. You need somebody at the property to collect the rent and put the rent checks in. It's still a business at the end of the day that has to keep operations moving. So, you know, how do we do that, but yet keep our employees safe, keep our residents safe? You know, there was a whole talk during COVID, you know, with nursing homes. It's a vulnerable population. They stop visitors, you know, everything that's happened with nursing homes. Think about affordable housing with a senior property. We're pretty much the next step. We might not have as much of a, I want to say health, you know, overall poor health with the seniors, but it was still a concern. Like, how do we keep that building safe? Because at the end of the day, we care and we want to do what we can. So some of this, I'll talk about staffing strategies first. Was at Penrose, what we did was we separated every single employee. So the maintenance person and the property manager were not allowed to be on site at the same time. There was complete coordination of movement throughout the property. The coordinators, we pulled all of our supportive service coordinators off site immediately, and they were working remotely. And as odd as this sounds, they were kind of like our last man standing group. They weren't allowed to interact with any other employees, so that if for some reason the maintenance person and a property manager, or at a property, became ill from COVID or for some other reason were unable to go on site, we could have the coordinators then go on site and jump in to keep operations going. So we had to become very strategic in how we can make sure we can be there for our residents during this pandemic that none of us knew what to expect or how to really respond to. Some of the other strategies or the challenges that I think I just wanted to follow up on, that Kim hit most of them, but one of the challenges was our residents and how they were responding to COVID. Seniors did not understand social distancing, and some of them just didn't want to social distance. They wanted to be able to, go talk to their neighbor like they used to, or come in the property manager's office and sit with them. So there was a whole learning curve of how we had to educate our residents, specifically our seniors. I know at one of our properties, the first thing we did at all of our properties is remove any furniture in common spaces, and we locked down our community rooms. And the seniors were so angry, they went and got their own lawn chairs and brought them down and sat in the lobby. And, they are all sitting there with their coolers and drinks. And we're like, no, like social distancing. So that was a huge challenge in the beginning as well. But like Kim said, we came out stronger because of COVID. And I think there's a lot of things that we've learned and we've all connected better with. Like Kim said, we immediately said, start calling every single resident. Every single resident gets a phone call, and we called them on every couple days. And at first it was, how are you doing? What do you need? And then that turned into some people saying, look, I appreciate your concern, but I don't want you to call me every week. So then there were some people that needed that phone call and that lifeline. So that was really important. Managing donations, like Kim said, that was a huge focus for our service coordinators. One of the things that I think from a business aspect that everybody needed to understand was rent collections had to become first and foremost priority. So we were concerned about everyone's health, absolutely. We were strategic in how we kept our operations going, but we're also a business that relies on rent collections. So if we don't have money coming in, we can't pay our bills. And then, what does that mean for our staff? The concern was at first, well, we have to furlough people, which then how do you keep your properties going? So rent collections were something that every single team member was focused on, and we tried to quickly identify those that might have issues paying rent. We tried to get them any resource available. We tried to make people, when this unemployment rolled out with the extra $600, we made sure our teams were there it was challenging, I think, for anyone, but now take somebody who might not be used to having to apply for unemployment. We had to sometimes help them and walk them through those steps. So that was a huge part of the supportive service department, was helping them through all of those applying for benefits processes. Once the rent resources became available, we communicated constantly to our residents. This program's available. Here's the window. This is how you apply. We made sure that we had it in front of them and we made it accessible to them, and we could help them any step we can to apply for that rental assistance. I will say, and I can't speak for Mission First, but Penrose rent collections, we remained steady throughout the entire pandemic until just this month. We're a little behind. So we're trying to quickly assess that. And I think it is probably due to losing that extra $600 of unemployment. I also think it's maybe some people now are using up savings that they might have had, school virtual learning started. So there might be some different factors going into that. But as an industry, rent collections were definitely are a concern of ours. So one of the things, we don't want to just talk at you, and I know supportive services, if you're not familiar with it, it might seem foreign, and we know, and some of you might be very familiar with it, but it's hard to understand what we do on a daily basis if you haven't ever been in our shoes sometimes. So living our mission, I just wanted to share this story. This was a story where one of our coordinators, through her phone calls, just checking in with someone. It was one of our Easton properties, which is outside of Allentown. And it was an elderly gentleman. And he always was that guy at the property when she would pull in, was there and what looked forward to seeing her and greeting her, and, was cheerful with all the other residents. And through the pandemic, she saw this constant, he was changing a little bit. And finally, in one of her calls, this happened probably just about 6 weeks ago. He said to her, Anna, I just don't feel like going on anymore. And she immediately went into that. This is what we do as coordinators. Now we're in crisis mode. This gentleman's in crisis. How do we help him? So she did all the right things. She called me immediately and said, Shannon, I need to go and knock on his door and see him and make sure he's okay. And I said, go, absolutely. You go, as long as you're, social distancing. So she went and she did that. She called, the crisis hotline. She got him someone to speak with, and she reached out to his family with his permission. So making sure that he's a little more connected, because the social isolation, it's really getting to our seniors. They were socially isolated to begin with, and this has just, combined things for them. And some of them, you start to see little health things now starting to happen. So our coordinators, we really are their lifelines in a lot of ways. One of the things that Penrose also did immediately, we all started asking ourselves, what can we do? How can we help? So through our Penrose Foundation, which we established a couple years ago, we started a Penrose Resident Relief Fund. We reached out to our employees who were, we had very generous employee donations. We reached out to our corporate partners, our community partners, and we asked for donations. And I think we raised over $50,000 in a very short amount of time. And one of the things that we did was we reached out to our teams then and said, if you know a resident who's in need, apply through the foundation for help. They either received a gift card for $150 that can help them with any basic need. It could be just buying food or diapers or medication, or they received a food box, which the food box was enough to feed a family of 4 for 2 weeks. And they could reapply. If they continued to see a need, they could reapply. It wasn't just a one-time thing. So that was one way that we tried to reach out and help our residents. The next thing I want to share with you is a video. This really highlights, from a resident perspective, how important supportive services and this Resident Relief Fund was. We can't hear it, Tammy.
Mother.
Oh no. Okay.
You want to start it over?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you hear it after I unmuted myself?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
Thanks. But you can see it full screen? Is it
We
okay.
could, but I don't, yeah.
Okay, great.
There we go.
My name is Carmela Riley. I lived in Falls Ridge for about 11 years. The reason why I moved over to Falls Ridge because I had 2 children. I was a single parent. All my life, we struggled. All my life, I struggled. My mother was a single mother. And it was always like broken neighborhood. Right across the street was a drug house. 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, you would hear boom, 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 boom. Even though I lived in that neighborhood, but in my mindset, I didn't want that. And I didn't want that for my children. And I was like, God, I can't take it no more. I just need you now to please help me with my children to get a better environment. And I filled out an application. And when I came in this neighborhood, it's so different. It's so peaceful. 11 years, I never had to experience that. It's the environment that I wanted better for my children, that they didn't have to suffer or go through what I had to go through. And that's why I get a little emotional talking about it. During COVID, what helped me was Mr. Fitzum. During this pandemic, a lot of people are losing their lives and different things like that. And not just from the sickness, but just being stressed out. During this pandemic, Mr. Fitzum reached out and made sure we had food and household products. My neighbors made sure if I needed a ride to get to the market. We just pulling together. During the pandemic, we are really pulling together and coming together. It's a good community here to make sure each and every one of us have the special needs, personal needs that we needed. Oh my God, I was so happy, so excited for the relief fund. I had lost my job during the COVID, because of the COVID. And I didn't know how I was gonna get my bills paid, my phone bill, everything paid. And when we got the relief fund, oh my God, that was just the best thing that could have happened to me. So I am so grateful to be here in Falls Ridge.
So I think it, you know, and I'm sure Carmela's story can be echoed, you know, throughout Mission First and many other stories within Penrose. You know, it really is why we do what we do. And, you know, it's a thank you to the developers who put the projects together, all the way down to the coordinators who help the residents become successful. It really is a huge team of people. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call are part of that as well. So it's nice to see the impact we make in someone's life. And I think the last thing that we really want to talk about is when we talk about supportive services, or we talk about the housing industry. And, you know, hopefully you've seen how the importance of supportive services and how we are there to help those residents be successful tenants, so we can have successful properties and our companies can be successful. You know, where do we go next? How do we go from this crisis and move to a stability, or the new norm, so that we can still provide the programming and, you know, break down those barriers and help our residents move towards the goals that they want to achieve. So I'll let Kim talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Shannon. Sure, everything's going to look a lot different, but of course we still want to continue to provide the same programming that we did before. The holidays are coming. We were very active during the holidays last year, and our goal is to still provide the same services we did last year. Giving out food, having holiday celebrations in some way. We're just going to have to go about things differently, and we're so lucky that our community supporters are still, you know, willing to come out, willing to mask up and PPE up, just to provide these holiday, you know, gifts and things for our residents. So resident meetings are going to look a little bit differently. We used to have monthly resident meetings in the community room. The community room is no longer available for us to meet that way. We're going to have to do smaller meetings, possibly phone conferences as resident service meetings. Technology, that's an ongoing issue. Our computer room is also closed currently. In my building specifically, we work with the VA because I work with veterans, and the VA has been wonderful in providing laptops to people who require them. So that's also an ongoing section that we're looking at to make sure people can stay connected. And like I mentioned, the programming, you know, we're, instead of getting together and doing arts and crafts, we may have a door decorating contest, you know, something that they can do individually, not in a group, and then have somebody go around and judge it in that way. So we're throwing a lot of things around. We still want to move forward and provide the services that we did before. It's just going to look a little different.
So Kimberly and I provided our information. If anybody has any questions, or we're more than happy to answer any of your questions, or provide you, you know, if you have any resources that we could help you with, we'll be more than happy to share with you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. So ladies, we thought at this point we would break into smaller groups. But the fact of the matter is there's 12 of us here. I think we can avoid talking over each other. And I think that we'll really get the benefit of both perspectives. I'm terrible with this. I'm pointing at Shannon on my screen and at Kim, forgive me. But yeah, you know, if you have a question, I'm not sure, Tammy, do you want to filter everything through the chat function? Raise your hand, Q&A, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, let's try. If you feel comfortable voicing your question, maybe just raise your hand or speak. If you're not comfortable, feel free to tap it in the chat and we can address it that way too.
I have a question. Shannon or Kim, either one. So have you found that because of the seniors and the isolation, that you're spending more money on those properties in your services than otherwise? Because I'm imagining you're now having to scramble to make sure that people are maintaining and okay when we had to socially distance and they had to isolate.
I mean, in my experience, I don't think we're spending more money, but I think
Okay.
definitely it's taking more manpower.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we're staying connected by phone or however we're doing that. It's, we were talking earlier today about how we feel like we're just working all the time now. And so it's not, I don't really see a cost difference in it. Of course, I'm not at the top, but it just seems to be more manpower driven at this point.
Yeah, and from the cost perspective, you know, I think it really just depends on how the property, you know, and I just to be, how do I want to say this? Penrose operates, so Kimberly shared how large her company was. We have like 10,000 units in 9 different states. So we're pretty large. And I would have to say throughout COVID, our resident, like for the most part, we did not see a huge impact as far as, you know, people like the nursing homes did. It wasn't like, you know, somebody got sick with COVID in our building and then it spread like wildfire. We were very, like, as soon as we knew somebody that, you know, we asked everybody, first of all, we said, if you have any signs or symptoms or you test positive, you know, just can you please let us know. If we found out, we would do a deep clean. We would bring an outside third party company to come in and they would deep clean every single common space, every elevator. And then we would send a letter out to the residents. They say someone in the building has tested positive. You know, and that would kind of hopefully put them on high alert. So as far as cost, you would see a cost rise if there was a lot of turnover. We did have some people pass from COVID, but it wasn't a huge number at one property. So I would say we did okay. We stabilized our costs throughout COVID.
And just kind of to a follow-up to that, have you found efficiencies in the way that you're working too, because of COVID, and it's sort of forcing you to think outside the box, as Kimberly said?
That age-old term. Sure, I think at first we were just doing whatever we could, right? So we were just throwing things out there and seeing what would stick. And as time goes on, we're learning more about what people are responding to, what their needs are. And I think the longer we're in this, the more problems with getting their rent paid possibly we will see. At the beginning, I think Shannon mentioned that they were very stable and we were as well. And more resources are popping up. So things are going to shift a little, I think, from the beginning. We will become more efficient. We are more efficient as people get more used to this new normal.
I have a question. So how do you think about it on the front end? I mean, going away from COVID, I don't know. How do you think about it on the front end in the sense of you have the services? Do you, when you are housing people or renting up, do you have a certain person in mind that is appropriate, or is it just whoever qualifies on paper, meaning, you know, because most of these buildings are tax credits, those are who you're going to serve regardless of, you know, anything else?
Are you talking about the resident?
Yep.
So it's fair housing. So there's a very strict criteria as to who moves into our building, and we don't ever look at, you know, anything other than that criteria. So, you know, in our world, so just to give you guys, and hopefully I'm going to answer this, I'm trying to answer your question. Obviously there's fair housing and, you know, we have our very strict guidelines that we follow, but even in the supportive service world, we may know a resident has dementia. Right? Because Kim and I have been in this business a long time. And I'm just going to give you a little example. We will never act, because we're not medical professionals. We can never say, you need to move out because this is independent living and you have dementia.
Mhm.
So no, we don't ever pick and choose who's going to be a better fit for a building. You know, if somebody moves in and they have dementia and, you know, their daughter moved them in and spoke the whole time, so that, you know, then they move in and, you know, they're struggling independently, we're just going to step in like we would anybody else, try to help them connect to those services. And if it's not the appropriate housing, then help them, you know, get there.
Right.
Did I answer your question? I don't know if
Yeah,
I did.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, completely.
So are there any like anybody from an architect firm or anybody that kind of works on the front end of development on the call? Christine? So I'm curious because I'm wondering if because of COVID, depending on how long this goes, if we're going to start changing the designs of our buildings to fit more of this world that we're all living in with children virtually learning right next to us while we're trying to sit at our my dining table, you know, working. You know,
Yeah.
so, you know, you think about these apartments we're building and how we typically, or even our community rooms, you know, so
Yes.
there's a part of me that says, do we need to start to have these conversations about changing the design to fit more of this new normal?
And I'm not an architect. I'm on the front end of, putting deals together. But it's interesting. I had an investor ask if we had incorporated that on like a month. We were like COVID hit and we closed a month later, and they asked, "Did you incorporate any COVID protections in your designs?" And I was like, "Well, no, we didn't." But it is going to be really interesting. I think there are easy. I've heard from architects that there are some easy things that they're learning about elevators and some shared spaces that I think they'll easily incorporate. But I think there's really also bigger picture things like about outside space in
Yeah.
multifamily buildings. I personally feel like that's the lesson of COVID is we all need someplace to go outside of our unit easily.
Absolutely.
So.
I'd be curious that because saying Shannon, I'm working with most of your developers, they get on the front end, the deals that were penciled, I can't imagine that they can change much, but I would imagine all the deals now going forward post-COVID, they're probably contemplating that significantly
Yeah.
and trying to contemplate how to do that.
Yeah, I actually have a deal that is in construction, and it's over 100 units. It's a senior supportive housing building, and they actually decided to put more money in their design of their common space after the fact. And I mean, they're still also trying to figure out how they're going to cover it, but but they did it, and they're doing it, and that includes hiring an architect to kind of work with the common spaces and also figure out how and where they're going to be providing services and the furniture, and do they need to think about certain type of furniture in the common area. So it's interesting.
I'm curious to see the new deals that get penciled now, because they're going to be some I would imagine they're going to be some very creative designs going forward, because not only just that, like what does the units look like, and to Shannon's point, where are they building space to kind of isolate and to count for that? Like, I don't know how you would do that in a multifamily apartment unit, but how do you structure something if a parent is at home and a child is learning, distant learning, although I'm hoping, cross my fingers, that that's not the new normal, but
It's
but
funny
still.
you mentioned
I heard from some developers that the buildings that are more like walk-up, where each tenant has their own entrance, have been safer versus the one building with the elevators. So I don't know if that's going to become more common.
That's interesting. I had a developer recently who had 80 plus one-bedroom units, and he went and he cut the number of units pretty drastically to put as many 2 bedrooms as he could in there, because he's seeing this movement toward live work. And selfishly, very selfishly, my husband and I moved last month, and you can see my partner, my 8-year-old, sits here during the day, 3 days a week. But the fact of the matter is that we were lucky enough to find a 4-bedroom home in our price range. And so we do have offices, and it's a game changer. I mean, it's incredible. So I actually thought that was a pretty clever shift for this developer to, really not eliminate entirely, but minimize the 1-bedroom units and increase the 2 bedrooms.
The only thing is in affordable, if we're talking just affordable, it's still going to come down to number of occupants. So, and you know, our residents would love that, you know, but I think, you know, in my mind, like, does the design shift to building in like a desk somewhere? Like in I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but I don't know too many multifamily units that you go in and there's like a desk, or even just a little maybe space that's carved out that's a little more private. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where our industry goes with this.
Because they could do built-in desks and
Yeah.
And what's interesting too, and I'm so not an architect, but like, as I understand the tiniest bit of anything, like, you know, ventilation is a key issue with COVID, and passive house is like the opposite of ventilation because it's about sealing in things. So I wonder what impact on like energy efficiencies that'll have. But I also just want to say, like, I think you're training everybody in supportive services is fantastic. And I'm so glad to hear about that. And Tamita's on the line from Inglis, and she's in property management. And I think really, like, yeah, having Inglis, you know, engage property management in a development deal. I think a lot of times developers fail in not engaging supportive service and property managers at the upfront point to, like, and for companies to say, this is important enough that we're going to put the time, you know, we'll have you do a little less of the time and you're like working with current people and put some time into really shaping what comes next so that we build the right thing for you.
So I will say with Penrose, I think, at least, you know, well, from my perspective, I think that what makes us do good deals and be able to stay very competitive in this, because we all know it's gotten extremely competitive, you know, with the shift in the market, but we stay competitive because we have shared services. So like we have a whole team of people. I oversee supportive services in the management company, but I also work with every single developer, and we have a VP of transition management who we work on the deals with the developers from the point we need to come in and help them with those tax credit applications, or even go to the RFPs. We've already gone to those interviews, and then we follow that deal all the way to stabilization. And then I still stay involved the whole time as well. So, you know, my developers aren't on this call because I know a lot of those ladies are in this group. So just so you all know, I did send them a nasty email, but
Thank you.
I called them out. But like, well, I've already sat with one of them, and, you know, her and I work very well together. And she's like, and I'm going to put a dog park here because there's a lot of green space. And I'm like, that's great, except we usually don't allow pets at our family property. So sometimes there is that disconnect, you know, and it's important to even get down to those little details as to, you know, it might sound good here, but it might not be a good project to hand over to management. So
that's because they're trying to design a gorgeous building and they're not thinking about the people that are ultimately going to live in it and be efficient and it work.
And the other thing, when you talk about training the entire staff, one of the things which, you know, we're not good in our society of doing is talking about some of these issues that we need to talk about. So, you know, for one, mental health, you know, it's a very taboo conversation that a lot of people aren't comfortable having. So what we did at Penrose is we said, we want to change that conversation and we want to be part of that change. So myself and our director of training, we went through a pretty intensive course to get certified as mental health first aid instructors. So our goal, well, COVID ruined our plans, but when we can go back to that world, our goal is to train every single employee in Penrose over the next 2 years so that they are mental health first aiders. So, you know, it's just recognizing that it's okay to talk about it. And it's not just for our residents' sake, but it's for our employees and their friends and their families, because it's happening all around us. So yeah, it is really trying to, you know, understand what the issues are and be part of that change.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I have a question. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tamita Jordan from Inglis Housing Corp. During COVID, what has your experience been in changing technology? I think, Shannon, one of the things you had mentioned during your presentation was how important technology was, and just how making shifts that were necessary to stay, you know, to keep communication. So I'm really interested to see and hear, were there any specific type of technology changes and adjustments that and you know, anybody has made that has been during COVID that has been helpful with residents and communication? English serves a population. We serve, most of our communities are for residents who are disabled, even though we do have family communities as well. But residents with disabilities have, very extreme, some have very extreme challenges. And one of the things that we found is, although everyone has a cell phone, mostly everyone has a cell phone, the use of other types of technology. Shane, I think you mentioned like having Zoom resident meetings or communicating with residents using other methods of technology. So just, how has that been? Did you find anything that was challenging through that, something that worked, something that didn't work, and how receptive were residents to that? Because, quite frankly, for us, I feel like that's still, something that we're challenged with in being able to communicate with our residents using technology when the social distancing is so important and when, presence on properties is different than it used to be and that sort of thing. So.
And I think actually it was Kim that talked more about it, but I'll give you high level and then Kim could talk residents, because it is still challenging with residents. But as a property management company, even, you think about that business, you show apartments, you sign leases, you're doing everything is face to face. And now we had to scramble and say, how do we still keep our business going? And we can't do these things. So on the operations side, there's been we do a lot of virtual, we got virtual tours set up so that people could just virtually tour things. They went to different Yardi systems like Rent Cafe where people could online put their application in. So a lot of different technology that's being forced for the residents too. Even the recertification process went to an online process. The family properties didn't seem to struggle as much as our senior properties did. And like Kim said, we're still, you could give them the Zoom instructions. And if you ever tried to get them to call Social Security, it's the same struggle. They can't do it. They can't sit through those prompts. They can't push the button, So it is still a struggle. And, Kim and I were talking earlier, that's what we're kind of saying, like, where do we go next? And, is one of the things maybe just putting smart TVs now in all of our community rooms, having the community room now, is, we're used to have 30 people come in, you just have 10 people come in socially distanced and you virtually have a program, is that how we're going to connect to them? So I think it's, we're all still struggling with technology. And Kim, I'll let you, if you have any other ideas, but I don't think anybody's solved that issue yet.
No, not yet. And I can tell you what I found, our seniors and our veterans were most, they were not willing to jump on the technology. It's a challenge, they want to be able to see you, especially our seniors. They want to be able to talk face to face and, wander over to their friend's house, like Shannon was saying earlier. So reaching out to them, being consistent, and making it as easy as possible for them, technology-wise, is something that we really were striving to do. Some people were willing to give it a shot and other people weren't. So we were still reaching out by phone for those folks, just meeting them where they were.
We're also talking about, and again, post-COVID, do you purchase an iPad that residents can kind of loan out and then you do a deep clean of that device? Of course, IT doesn't like that idea. Then they thought about kind of like a gaming station where there'd be a computer and iPad for residents to utilize. That again would be more monitored and deep cleaned. But I don't think I'm in a lot of different groups and I don't think anybody has solved this one yet. So if anybody has any suggestions, send them our way. My mom still has a flip phone and I keep telling her it's going away and she refuses. So they're stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we have time for one more question, if there is one out there. If not, I'm going to be selfish and ask Kim, because we were prepping for this call yesterday. And Kim, you mentioned something that I just thought was so clever. You're doing a virtual book club with your residents.
Yes.
I think that's amazing. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how that and who you're engaging for that?
Sure. So the book club is specifically for my building, which is the Whitehall, which is veterans. We have male and female veterans there. I'm always trying to think of different things to bring us together. And because they're not engaging in Zoom, on my smartphone, I can have conference calling. So I wanted to start a book club. I always have wanted. I figured, why not do it now? We don't have to do face-to-face, right? Everybody will get their own copy of a book that we agree on. I'll give out descriptions of the books that I've chosen in conjunction with the director of our local library here. She gave me some ideas. They'll choose the book. We'll read for a couple of weeks, and then we'll do a conference call, discuss the book, and go from there. So I'm really excited for it.
And how many people do you have participating in that?
So far I had 4, but I sent out another reminder to say, please don't forget to sign up outside of my office. So when I go back in on Tuesday, I'm hoping to have more people.
I wish you best of luck. I'm an avid reader, so I think that that's a really great idea. And I just think it's a fantastic way to bring everybody together. I think that contact is so important.
I do too. The sharing of ideas, and even if we don't talk about the book, we're still getting together.
Connecting.
Yes.
Exactly. Any last thoughts?
Thank you all so much for putting this together. This was awesome. I missed the very beginning of it, but you offered some really great suggestions and recommendations. And, I think it's definitely needed as we all brainstorm and try and figure out how to do what we do better and stay connected with our residents and, keeping them connected since they've been, very isolated. So I just appreciate this forum and thank you all so much for the great work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really glad you were able to join us. Kim, Shannon, thank you again. The content was fantastic, and ladies, the conversation as well, the questions and follow-up, we truly appreciate it.
I do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to be contacting you because, like I said, you got to work smarter, not harder. So we share resources and we support each other. So I'll definitely be in touch.
Wonderful.
And don't forget to send us your ideas.
Technology.
Can you make your contact information available again? And is the slides going to be available also? The presentation?
Tammy?
Yeah, good question. We have not gotten that far. We recorded it. Now, hopefully that worked. That was my first time doing that. So thanks for bearing with us. It may not have worked the way I thought it was working. But we are going to post this whole meeting on our web members only website page, and you can access it there. And to meet, if you don't have that passcode, just send us an email, or if anybody doesn't have it, just send us an email and we can get it for you. I think it's WFPA IFPA.
It is WFPA IFPA.
Thank you. Thank you. So there you go. It's WFPA IFPA on the website members only section, and just give me a day or so to figure out how to upload it there.
And I just wanted to say, I know we feel like we've overloaded on development content, and it was so awesome to have like operations content, and we really want to engage more folks in the operations side in women in housing, and be a network for all of us, so that we are all sharing ideas, because it's incredibly helpful.
Chris, I couldn't agree more. I thought it was so useful, and I really enjoyed it. So again, thank you all. Glad you all were able to join us, and send us your ideas. And if it's more service related stuff, let us know. We'll email Shannon and Kim.
That'd be great.
And let us know if you want to get involved in the steering committee, because we are really looking to try to add some more folks. We've had service folks, and then kind of when we lost them, ended up getting too heavy on development. So
I was following up with them tomorrow, Chris. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a great
all.
night, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.